हाँ जी, सत श्री अकाल जी सारिਆਂ आई होप तुम सारे ठीक ठाक होवोगे। तो ये जी वीडियो की सीरीज़ है मैं नवी शुरू करने जा रहा जिद कि मैं एक एडवाइस जी है ना बहुत सारे जो यूट्यूबर या होर जो विद्वान है उन्होंने मैं फॉलो करन जा रहा। एक टिप जी कि हैगी है कि तुम डेली 15 मिनट जी है ना कुछ बुक रीड या कोई भी चीज़ जी ना तुम पढ़नी है। सो मैं क्या क्यों ना ये जी जर्नी है तुहाडे नाल ही की जाए, ਤੁਹਾਨੂੰ भी ਇਹਦਾ पता लगेगा क्योंकि हुण मैं जो ये वीडियो बनावांगा मैं डेली बेसिस ते कोशिश रखूँगा कि डेली बेसिस ते वीडियो बनावां मैं सो दैट तुसीं मैनूं ट्रैक कर सको कि मैं इस जो ये बुक पढ़ना पिया। देखो जॉर्डन पीटरसन की ये बुक आ। सो ये मैं डेली 15 मिनट पढ़िया करनी है। आई डोंट नो कि किन्ने टाइम दे विच पूरी होएगी। सो हुण जो टाइम होया है शाम का टाइम आ, तकरीबन 6 बजे होए आ ते मैं मोबाइल के उत्ते जिहड़ा टाइम सैट कर दूंगा। तो मैं इस बुक नूं बोल के पढ़न वास्ते वीडियो बना रहा कि मैं बोल के पढ़ा तो जो भी पढ़ना पिया मैं हाँ होपफुली नाल समझूंगा उन्होंने, ठीक है। तो वो मैं जो रिकॉर्डिंग करूँगा तो इन केस तुसीं बुक दे विच जो लिखिया वो भी तुसीं समझ सकते हैं। तो प्लस जो भी डिवेलपमेंट होगी फॉर एग्जाम्पल जो भी का फायदा होगा तुसी वो भी देख सकोगे कि मेरे बोलने दे विच जां जो मैं इंग्लिश वोकैबलरी वर्ड्स सीखना पिया है ना वो नाल मैं दसूँगा किहड़े वोकैबलरी वर्ड्स आए आ ते आपां उन्हां दा मीनिंग भी नाल ही क्लीयर करांगे, ठीक है जी। तो ठीक है मैं एक्चुअली जिहड़ी ये बुक है ना ये पढ़ चुकिया मैं तकरीबन ये 22 पेज जिहड़े ना पढ़ चुके हाले इंट्रोडक्शन ही चलती पई आ। सो जिन्नी भी बुक अपनी होगी मैं होप करदा कि डेली के 15 मिनट जिहड़े है ना इस बुक के नाल मैं पढ़ा तो नाल वीडियो बनावा सो दैट तुहानूं पता लग सके कि बुक विच एक्चुअली की लिखिया होया। तो जिहड़ी मेरी जर्नी है डेली 15 मिनट्स पढ़न दी जो मैं किते पढ़िया सी जां मैं किते वीडियोज़ भी देखिया सी कि अपने काफ़ी ज़्यादा नाल फायदा हुंदा अपनी जिद्दां फॉर एग्जाम्पल वोकैबलरी इनक्रीज हुंदी है, इंग्लिश इनक्रीज हुंदी है ओबवियसली। तो वो मैं आज तो शुरू करन जा रहा सदा। सो ठीक है जी आपां शुरू कर। For the ancients, the discovery that different people have different ideas about how practically to live did not paralyze them. It deepened their understanding of humanity and led to some of the most satisfying conversations human beings have ever had about how life might be lived. Likewise, Aristotle, instead of despairing about these differences, so the word that here we have is despair or despairing. Moral codes. Aristotle argued that those specific rules, laws and customs differed from place to place. What does not differ is that in all places human beings by their nature have a proclivity, the word is proclivity, to make rules, laws and customs. To put this in modern terms, it seems that all human beings are by some kind of biological endowment so ineradicably very nice word, ineradicably concerned with morality that we create a structure of law and rules wherever we are. The idea that human life can be free from moral concerns is a fantasy. We are rule generators. We are rule generators. इसदा मतलब है कि आपां जिहड़े रूल है या कानून है बनाउण वाले हैं। And given that we are moral animals, what must be the effects of our simplistic modern relativism upon us? What must be the effect of our simplistic modern relativism upon us? It means we are hobbling ourselves by pretending to be something we are not. बहुत वधिया इंग्लिश लिखी हुई है. It means we are hobbling ourselves. ਹੁਣ ਇੱਥੇ word ਆਇਆ hobbling, ਇਹਨੂੰ ਦੇਖਾਂਗੇ ਆਪਾਂ. By pretending to be something we are not. It is a mask, but a strange one. For the meaning है ਇੱਥੇ because. For it mostly deceives the one who wears it. Very nice English. Scratch. The most clever postmodern relativist Professors Mercedes with a key, and you will see how fast the mask of relativism with its pretense, word is pretense, with its pretense that there can be neither right nor wrong, and the clock, word is clock, of radical tolerance come off, because we do not yet have an ethics based on modern science. Jordan is not trying to develop his rules by wiping the slate clean, by dismissing thousands of years of wisdom as mere superstition and ignoring our greatest moral achievements. Far better to integrate, word is integrate, the best of what we are now learning with the books human beings saw fit to preserve over millennia, and with the stories that have survived against all odds. Time's tendency to obliterate, word is obliterate. Time's tendency to obliterate. He is doing what reasonable guides have always done. He makes no claim that human wisdom begins with himself, but rather turns first to his own guides. And although the topic in this book are serious, Jordan often has great fun addressing them with a light touch, as the chapter headings convey. He makes no claim to be exhaustive, and sometimes the chapters consist of wide-ranging discussions of our psychology as he understands it. So why not call this book a guidelines, a far more relaxed, user-friendly and rigid and less rigid sounding term than rules, because these really are rules, and the foremost rule is that you must take responsibility for your own life. One might think that a generation that has heard endlessly from their more ideological teachers about the rights that belong to them would object to being told that they would do better to focus instead on taking responsibility. Yet this generation, many of whom were raised in small families by hyper-protective parents on soft surface playgrounds and then taught in universities with safe spaces where they don't have to hear things they don't want to, schooled to be risk averse, has among it now millions who feel stultified. It's a word I know apne kol ek stultified by this underestimation of their potential resilience, word I resilience, and who have embraced Jordan's message that each individual has ultimate responsibility to bear, that if one wants to live a full life, one first sets one's house, that if one wants to live a full life, One first sets one's own house in order, and only then can one sensibly aim to take on bigger responsibilities. The extent of this reaction has often moved both of us to brink of tears. Sometimes these rules are demanding. They require you to undertake an incremental process that over time will stretch you to a new limit. That requires, as I have said, venturing into the unknown. Stretching yourself beyond the boundaries of your current self requires carefully choosing and then pursuing ideals that are up there, above you, superior to you, and that you can't always be sure you will reach. But if it's uncertain that our ideals are attainable, why do we bother reaching in the first place? Because if you don't reach for them, it is certain you will never feel that your life has meaning. And perhaps because, as unfamiliar and strange as it sounds, in the deepest part of our psyche, we all want to be judged. Dr. Norman Deutsch, MD, is the author of The Brain That Changes Itself. ये उन्होंने इंट्रोडक्शन की टाइप ऑफ लिखी हुई है. नेक्स्ट वर्ड आ गया ओवरचर. This book has a short history and a long history. We will begin with the short history. In 2012, I started contributing to a website called Quora. On Quora, anyone can ask a question of any sort and anyone can answer. Readers upvote those answers they like and downvote those they don't. In this manner, the most useful answers rise on the top while the others sink into oblivion. What is oblivion? I was curious about the site. I liked its free-for-all nature. The discussion was often compelling, and it was interesting to see the diverse range of opinions generated by the same question. When I was taking a break or avoiding work, I often turned to Quora looking for questions to engage with. I considered and eventually answered such questions. What's the difference between being happy and being content? What things get better as you age? And what makes life more meaningful? Quora tells you how many people have viewed your answer and how many upvote you received. Thus, you can determine your reach and see what people think of your ideas. Only a small minority of those who view an answer upvoted. As of July 2017, as I write this, and 5 years after I addressed what makes life more meaningful, my answer to that question has received a relatively small audience, 14,000 views and 133 upvotes, while my response to the question about aging has been viewed by 7,200 people and received 36 upvotes. Not exactly home runs. However, it is to be expected on such sites. Most answers receive very little attention, while a tiny minority become disproportionately popular. Soon after I answered another question. What are the most valuable things everyone should know? I wrote a list of rules or maxims. What are maxims? Some dead serious, some tongue-in-cheek. Be grateful in spite of your sufferings. Be grateful in spite of your suffering. Do not do things that you hate. Do not hide things in the fog, and so on. The Quora readers appeared pleased with this list. They commented on and shared it. They said such thing as, I am definitely printing this list out and keeping it as a reference. Simply phenomenal. And you win, Quora. We can just close this site now. Students at University of Toronto, where I teach, came up to me and told me how much they liked it. To date, my answer to what are the most valuable things has been viewed by 120,000 people and been upvoted 2,300 times. Only a few hundred of roughly 600,000 questions on Quora have cracked the 2,000 upvote barrier. My procrastination-induced musings, what are musings, hit a nerve. I had written a 99.9 percentile answer. It was not obvious to me when I wrote the list of rules for living that it was going to perform so well. I had put a fair bit of care into all the 60 or so answers I submitted in the few months surrounding that post. Nonetheless, Quora provides market research at its finest. The respondents are anonymous. They are disinterested. In the best sense, their opinions are spontaneous and unbiased. So I paid attention to the results and thought about the reasons for that answer's disproportionate success. Perhaps I struck the right balance between the familiar and the unfamiliar while formulating the rules. Perhaps people were drawn to the structure that such rules imply. Perhaps people just like lists. A few months earlier, in March of 2012, I had received an email from literary agent. She had heard me speak on CBC Radio during a show entitled Just Say No to Happiness, where I had criticized the idea that happiness was the proper goal for life. Over the previous decades, I had read more than my share of dark books about the 20th century, focusing particularly on Nazi Germany and the Soviet Union. in the Soviet Union, Alexander Solzhenitsyn, अगर मैं गलत, if I have pronounced that word incorrectly, please do comment. The great documenter of the slave labor camp horror of the leader once wrote that pitifully ideology holding that human beings are created for happiness was an ideology done in by the first blow of the work assigners Cudgel. ਇਹ ਵਰਡ ਦੀ ਆਪਾਂ ਪ੍ਰੋਨਾਂਸੀਏਸ਼ਨ ਜ਼ਰੂਰ ਦੇਖਾਂਗੇ, ਠੀਕ ਹੈ ਜੀ, ਤੇ ਇਹਦਾ ਮੀਨਿੰਗ ਵੀ ਚੈੱਕ ਕਰਾਂਗੇ, ਕਿਉਂਕਿ because I am unaware of the meaning and the pronunciation of this word, right? Okay. In a crisis, the inevitable suffering that life entails can rapidly make a mockery of the idea that happiness is proper pursuit of the individual. On the radio show, I suggested instead that a deeper meaning was required. I noted that the nature of such meaning was constantly represented in the great story of the past, and that it had more to do with developing character in the face of suffering than with the happiness. This is part of the long history of the present work. So हाँ जी, ਜਿਹੜੇ ਆਪਾਂ पेजेस पढ़े आ 15 मिनट हो चुके एक्चुअली, ठीक है जी। सो ਜਿਹੜੇ पेजेस ਆਪਾਂ पढ़े आ ਤੇ ਮੈਂ ਚਲੋ पेजेस ਵੀ ਗਿਣ ਲੈਂਦੇ ਕਿੰਨੇ ਪੜ੍ਹੇ, ਬਟ ਮੈਨੂੰ ਪੜ੍ਹ ਕੇ ਕਾਫੀ ਚੀਜ਼ਾਂ ਪਤਾ ਲੱਗੀਆਂ ਐਕਚੁਅਲੀ। ਇਦਾਂ ਦੀ ਗੱਲ ਨਹੀਂ ਕਿ ਮੈਨੂੰ ਨਹੀਂ ਚੀਜ਼ਾਂ ਪਤਾ ਲੱਗੀਆਂ, ਕਾਫੀ ਚੀਜ਼ਾਂ ਪਤਾ ਲੱਗੀਆਂ, ਵਧੀਆ ਸਹੀ ਰੀਡਿੰਗ ਵੀ। ਤੇ ਆਪਾਂ ਜਿਹੜੇ ਨਾ ਹਿਸਾਬ ਲਾਉਂਦੇ ਆ ਕਿ ਕਿੰਨੇ ਪੜ੍ਹੇ पेजेस। ਸੋ ਆਪਾਂ ਸੀਗੇ 22 ਨੰਬਰ पेज ਤੇ 22, 23, 24, 25, 26 ਤੇ 27 पेज ਦਾ ਇੱਕ ਪੈਰਾਗ੍ਰਾਫ ਆ। ਸੋ ਇਹ ਆਪਾਂ ਪੜ੍ਹਿਆ ਤੇ ਤਕਰੀਬਨ 5 पेज, नो इशूज। बुक काफ़ी लेंथी आ, जे रोज़ 5 पेज पढ़ांगे तो आई थिंक काफ़ी टाइम लग जाना, बट नो इशूज, क्योंकि ਆਪਾਂ ਕੰਮ ਹੀ ਇਸ ਚੀਜ਼ ਤੇ ਕਰਦੇ ਪਏ ਆ ਕਿ ਉਹਨਾਂ ਨੇ ਰეკਮੈਂਡ ਕੀਤਾ ਆਪਾਂ ਨੂੰ ਕਿ ਡੇਲੀ ਤੁਸੀਂ ਨਾ 15 ਮਿੰਟਸ ਜਿਹੜੀ ਹੈ ਰੀਡਿੰਗ ਕਰਨੀ ਹੈ। ਸੋ ਆਪਾਂ ਜਿਹੜੀ ਬੁੱਕ ਹੈ ਇਹਨੂੰ ਕੰਪਲੀਟ ਕਰਾਂਗੇ, ਡੇਲੀ 15 ਮਿੰਟਸ ਆਫ ਰੀਡਿੰਗ। ਠੀਕ ਹੈ, ਸੋ ਆਈ ਹੋਪ that it will be very beneficial for our language development, and I believe that by the completion of this book, obviously I'm going to increase my vocabulary from this much to that much, right? And I hope that you will watch all the episodes that I'm recording here. So ठीक है जी, मैं ही दस्या इस वीडियो ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਕਿ ਇਹ ਜੋ ਮੈਂ ਪ੍ਰੈਕਟਿਸ ਕਰਦਾ ਪਿਆ ਇਸ ਨੂੰ ਬੁੱਕ ਨੂੰ ਪੜ੍ਹਨ ਤੋਂ ਬਾਅਦ ਜੋ ਡੇਲੀ ਪ੍ਰੈਕਟਿਸ ਕਰਦੇ ਪਏ ਆ, ਰਾਈਟ, 15 ਮਿੰਟ ਦਾ ਕਾਫੀ ਘੱਟ ਟਾਈਮ ਆ, ਤੇ ਸਿਰਫ 5 ਪੇजेस ਪੜ੍ਹ ਹੋ ਰਹੇ ਤੇ ਆਈ ਥਿੰਕ ਨਹੀਂ, ਆਪਾਂ ਦੇਖ ਲੈਂਦੇ ਕਿੰਨੇ पेजेस ਆ। ਸੋ ਜਿਹੜੇ ਦੇ पेजेस ਆ ਨੋਰਮਲੀ ਤਕਰੀਬਨ ਤੁਸੀਂ 400 पेजेस ਲਗਾ ਲਓ, ਤਕਰੀਬਨ 80 ਡੇਜ਼ ਆਪਾਂ ਲੱਗਣੇ ਆ ਬੁੱਕ ਨੂੰ ਫਿਨਿਸ਼ ਕਰਨ ਵਾਸਤੇ। 80 ਐਪੀਸੋਡਸ ਕਾਫੀ ਜ਼ਿਆਦਾ ਹੋ ਜਾਣਾ। ਸੋ ਆਪਾਂ ਕੋਸ਼ਿਸ਼ ਕਰਾਂਗੇ ਕਿ ਇਸ ਬੁੱਕ ਨੂੰ ਜਲਦ ਤੋਂ ਜਲਦ ਆਪਾਂ ਖਤਮ ਕਰ ਸਕੀਏ, ਤੇ ਇਹ ਜਿਹੜੀ ਬੁੱਕ ਨੂੰ ਖਤਮ ਕਰਨ ਲਈ ਆਪਾਂ ਕੋਈ ਨਹੀਂ ਜੁਗਾੜ ਲਾਉਂਦੇ ਆ। ਬਟ 80 ਡੇਜ਼ ਵੀ ਇਦਾਂ ਲੰਘ ਜਾਣੇ ਆ ਜੇ ਆਪਾਂ ਧਿਆਨ ਨਹੀਂ ਦਿੱਤਾ, ਹਨਾ, ਜੇ ਆਪਾਂ ਸਕਿਪ ਕਰਦੇ ਰਹੇ ਤਾਂ 80 ਡੇਜ਼ ਵੀ ਇਦਾਂ ਲੰਘ ਜਾਣੇ ਆ। ਸੋ ਡੇਲੀ ਪੜ੍ਹਦੇ ਰਹਾਂਗੇ ਤਾਂ ਬੈਨੀਫਿਟ ਹੋਊਗਾ। ਹਾਂ, ਕਿਸੇ ਦਿਨ ਆਪਾਂ ਜ਼ਿਆਦਾ ਵੀ ਪੜ੍ਹ ਸਕਦੇ ਹਾਂ, 10 पेजेस ਹੋ ਗਏ, ਠੀਕ ਹੈ। ਸੋ ਠੀਕ ਹੈ ਜੀ, ਆਪਾਂ ਡੇਲੀ ਮਿਲਦੇ ਰਹਾਂਗੇ ਤੇ ਇਸ ਬੁੱਕ ਦੇ ਆਖਿਰ ਤੱਕ ਹੋਪਫੁਲੀ ਆਪਾਂ ਕਾਫੀ ਜ਼ਿਆਦਾ ਆਪਣੀ ਵੋਕੈਬਲਰੀ ਇਨਹਾਂਸ ਕਰ ਚੁੱਕੇ ਹੋਵਾਂਗੇ। ਤੇ ਕੱਲਾ ਮੈਂ ਹੀ ਨਹੀਂ, ਤੁਸੀਂ ਵੀ ਆਪਣੀ ਵੋਕੈਬਲਰੀ ਇਨਹਾਂਸ ਕਰ ਚੁੱਕੇ ਹੋਵੋਗੇ। ਤੇ ਠੀਕ ਹੈ ਜੀ, ਆਪਾਂ ਅੱਜ ਦੀ ਵੀਡੀਓ ਇੱਥੇ ਸਟਾਪ ਕਰਦੇ ਹਾਂ, ਪਰ ਕੱਲ ਦੇ ਵਾਅਦੇ ਦੇ ਨਾਲ ਕਿ ਕੱਲ ਆਪਾਂ ਜ਼ਰੂਰ ਮਿਲਾਂਗੇ ਜੀ ਇਸੇ ਟਾਈਮ। ਤੇ ਠੀਕ ਹੈ ਜੀ, ਟੇਕ ਕੇਅਰ, ਕੱਲ ਮਿਲਦੇ ਹਾਂ।